Chapter 1 Unexpected but Overpowering Encounter. Holding the pictures, I unstrapped my seatbelt and got out of the car. So this is the place that Georgie Piggy was last seen, I said, looking down at my pictures, and I was looking back at each of them frequently. In the middle of looking at the information, I heard a loud but brief sound coming from my left, which didn't sound all that friendly. What was that sound? I asked, but didn't get that much time to react. In that time frame, just a few seconds later, before I even knew it, everything went black. After what felt like a never-ending black void, it all faded to white. Then a bedroom. I stood up, but I had this throbbing pain in the back of my head. It felt like a bruise from a long-range weapon, but after a few days I'd probably get over it. It took me a bit to recollect myself and investigate my surroundings, but I eventually was able to see normally. I couldn't recall what happened a few moments ago, but for sure, I knew I wasn't supposed to be here. Right as I opened that bedroom door, I felt a dark presence towering over the atmosphere of this house. Oh no, I've got to get out of here, I said, hurrying to investigate my surroundings before something bad happened. Their bathroom wasn't much of a shower and a sink, and a vent leading to the house's kitchen on the first floor. I hopped down the vent, and on the counter was a purple key, and the bench a green one. If this was someone's house, why would they bother locking everything up? To prevent robbers from stealing anything? Exploring the first floor, using the green key would be the most useful thing to use at the moment. When I used the red key, I went in what seemed to be a supply closet and found the red key and a hammer. Opening the door that led to the main room, I saw something I wish I didn't see. There was just this pig girl, pacing back and forth upstairs while holding a bat. Her eye's right pupil was glowing red, and her irises were pitch black. For a millisecond, I saw her glance in my direction, but I was lucky enough to hide behind the wall so I wasn't seen. The obvious thing I could infer is that this world-shifted Piggy was not friendly. Not one bit. The front door needed some things fixed and or written, so I had to put myself on a little adventure to find these items throughout their house. A wrench, hammer, white key, and a code. I waited for that Piggy girl to head to the top floor so I could sneak to the front door and use the hammer. Then maybe check the basement below to see if there are any further uses for the hammer. I silently ran to the door, got rid of the planks on the door, and tried to make a run for it. For the basement. But something happened that I wish didn't. Piggy spotted me. Once making eye contact, she started running toward me with a killer look on her face. Most likely she wanted to hit me with her bat, so the only logical thing I could do was run, or find a place to hide. She chased me around in circles. The living room, the kitchen, the dining room, the main room, for about a minute. Then afterward, I attempted a run down to the basement and quickly looked around for something to do. I turned to my left and saw another use for the hammer, but Piggy was right around the corner. But I had nowhere else to go. I dashed to the plank, broke it in half, and went through the elongated crawl space to finally get a moment's peace. That Piggy girl couldn't follow me through the crawl space for some whatever reason. So she eventually gave up and went back upstairs to the main room. Oh, goodness. That was a heart rate rising event, I said, slightly out of breath. What happened here exactly? Why was this presumably innocent college-year-old girl turned into a citizen-killing machine? Before I could get another thought, time was being wasted, so I went out the other side and found a purple safe and some ammo. I'm pretty sure I last left the purple key on the counter in the kitchen. I thought. I do wonder what could be in the safe, though. I went back to the other side of the crawl space, looked at the bench because I didn't have time to do so the first time, and saw both the gold key and the wrench. Since the gold safe was already down here, I grabbed the gold key and opened up the safe, revealing the code for the door. I cautiously grabbed the code and made it to the door unseen, put in the code, and went back down to the basement to grab the wrench. That girl, I just decided to call her Piggy. Piggy's location was currently unbeknownst to me, so I grabbed the wrench, used it on the door, and had a feeling there was another use for the wrench. Since I never thought of using the red key, I went to grab it and find where it goes. Surprise, surprise, I thought. It goes to the top floor, where Piggy's whereabouts were most likely to be. I hid in the basement and poked my head out every couple of seconds so I could get an idea of where Piggy takes her route of security. When she was back on ground level, I quickly ran upstairs to the top floor and used the red key, only to see a blue key and a plank. There was a hole in the floor and I was certain I needed that other side of the floor for a certain reason, so I used the plank to get to the other side. Obviously. I opened the available door furthest from me, and there were lasers. And I checked the other room, and there was another use for the wrench. Going to the other side of the plank, I went down the crawl space all the way to ground level, and went back to where I last put the wrench, the supply closet. Grabbing the wrench, I rushed again to the top floor, not knowing of Piggy's location, and disabled the lasers on the top floor. I then went to check what's behind that very harmful radiant red tape, and there was a green gear and an orange key. I felt like I wasn't technically seeing the whole picture, so I went to get the blue key and head to the kitchen by taking the crawl space route. I felt that I hadn't explored something yet, so when I got to the kitchen, the window was open. It seemed by hopping through it, I toured myself through the backyard. There was a well in the shed, which needed the blue key, so I used it. And what I found inside was something that had to do with the gears, I guess. It seemed I had to find even more gears around the house to presumably raise up the bucket from the well. I dashed back in the house and had another encounter with Piggy, so I did the same routine of running in circles, then hid until I was in the clear. I went to the top floor and went into the room with the green gear and orange key. To get further progress, I grabbed the green gear and went down the nearest crawl space. And down I went into the corridor in front of the bedroom, where I woke up from my recent knockout. I went into the bathroom, again, went down the crawl space to the kitchen, went through the open window, and placed the green gear in the shed. I looked again, and it seemed I needed a red gear as well. So to avoid being spotted by Piggy, I checked around the ground floor, second floor, and top floor. It all led to nothing. I didn't find any more useful items, so I grabbed the orange key at the top floor, then went down to the nearest crawl space. I was sure that there was something else in the basement, so I went down there and I thought right. I used the orange key to get down to Piggy's garage, and down underneath the shelf was the red gear. After so long of looking around, I picked up the red gear, but right at the doorway was her. Piggy was standing there with her bat. The look of a killer was smeared all over her face and snout. An elongated stare was shared between both of us, and what I was scared of is that there was only one way out of the garage, and she was in the way of that. It looked like she was looking at me with pity. Then she stepped aside to let me leave. This felt like a setup, but I took the chance as I was running out of time and ran out of there. Apparently, I thought right. As soon as I got out of the garage, Piggy started to chase me. So my only option left was to get in the elongated crawl space. Lucky for me, the other side of the crawl space led to the backyard, which was exactly where I needed to go. Using the red gear, I heard a chugging noise coming from the well, and out came the white key. Perfect, I thought. Now that I had the white key, it was the final sprint to the door, and I was highly assured that Piggy wasn't anywhere but that door. My only instinct left was to get the purple key from the kitchen, use it, and use whatever was in here. I hoped very well it was a weapon. I was able to jump back in through the window, get the purple key, jump back out, and open the safe. Inside was a gun, and next to that safe was ammo. One shot, I thought. One chance. I could not mess this chance up, or else I'd be screwed. Before committing the deed, I looked around the backyard for more ammo. There was some in the shed, but I didn't have time to check out the interior. I had to do this now. I jumped through the window, wielding the gun and a determined face behind my mask. Now that I knew I had a gun, I wasn't all that scared of Piggy. Getting inside, I actually looked around the house for her, preparing the best I could in order to take the shot. The gun was loaded. All that I needed now was a target to use it on. And what I found was Piggy standing there at the door. I readied myself and my gun, finding a good way to shoot her while in the kitchen, hiding my head every now and then so that she couldn't catch a trace of me. Though she was frequently alert, I couldn't even watch for 3 seconds without her tilting her head in my direction. When the time felt right, I aimed the gun at her head, pulled the trigger, and she was nothing but a mindless, functionless drone. In that temporary moment, I hurried to set down the gun to where I left the white key and finally get out of that house. Although I couldn't sneak by Piggy to use the key, she was in the direct middle of the door frame, and I had to do this. It was now or never. I was able to get on her shoulders, having the key in my hands, and apparently used it on the door. Once it was open, I ran out, the door shutting behind me. I was scared of what the world came to, especially after what happened to Piggy. By taking a breather and trying countless amounts of times to calm down, I was able to say what was on my mind. What on earth happened to that innocent pig? I yelled at myself. I looked again at the pictures. She looked so familiar, yet I've never seen anyone act like that before, I said, scratching my head and continued investigating these 2 photos. Not to mention that she tried to attack me, I reluctantly said as I looked back at Piggy's family house. I started to back away from the house, then went to the police car. I need to get some help from the station, I said, opening the door and getting in. I turned the keys, put it in drive, made a U-turn, then zoomed off to tell Doggy what happened at Piggy's family house. When I got there, I parked the police car while all the others are, grabbed my things, and locked up the car.